She fined me $200 for unauthorized fencing, even though the posts weren't on her property line. 2 weeks later, I found a survey map dated 2009 that showed the easement she'd been using as her personal driveway had already expired. I didn't say a word, just waited for the right meeting. Welcome to my channel. I'm Nate, a building inspector out of Denton, Texas, and I run this place to teach folks how to keep HOAs honest without breaking a single law. If you're new here, make yourself at home. Hit subscribe if you like real-world justice stories, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? The story started 3 months before that meeting, on a muggy June morning when the HOA president, her clipboard, and her permanent scowl came rolling down my street in a golf cart. My son's baseball gear was spread across our porch, and I'd just finished pouring concrete footings for a privacy fence. She pulled up and snapped a photo without a word. By sunset, there was a violation notice taped to my mailbox. Unapproved structure within setback limits. Remove or face daily fines of $200 effective 06/19. She'd underlined the date twice in red. It wasn't even signed by the board, just her. When I called the management office, the clerk said, "She's acting president until next quarter elections. Technically, she can issue temporary enforcement letters." Technically. That word makes my teeth ache. I asked for the plat map, the setback measurements, anything showing I'd violated something real. They told me to submit a records request in writing. So I did. Certified mail, receipt, number 7022-0410-0002-89117. 3 days later, my fence posts were tagged with orange stickers reading, "Remove immediately, safety hazard." The kicker, her son drove an ATV straight across my back lot every weekend to cut between streets. That shortcut tore a trench through my grass, and it's the reason I was putting up the fence in the first place. I walked the property line that night with a flashlight, snapping photos of tire ruts and the broken irrigation pipe they'd caused. I measured 12 feet wide, 47 feet long. I printed the photos, logged timestamps, and slid them into a binder labeled Evidence 0616. Years in code enforcement had taught me one thing: paper beats gossip. The next morning, my neighbor Pete shuffled over in his robe, coffee steaming in one hand. "You stirred the nest," he said. "She's been mad since her ATV got caught on the curb you poured last fall." Pete's one of those retirees who's seen it all. Former postmaster, methodical, slow talker. I told him I wasn't trying to start a war, just protect my yard. He nodded toward the HOA bulletin board. "Then you'll want to see what she just pinned up." I walked over. New notice. Community trail closure. Unauthorized obstruction by Lot 42. Temporary access suspended. Lot 42 was mine. The wording made it sound like I'd closed a public amenity, not blocked a private shortcut. The board email at the bottom listed a public hearing scheduled for June 30th. No agenda, no evidence link, just accusation. That night, my son Ethan asked why I looked so tense. He's 11. He's got my late wife's eyes. Steady, blue, too honest for this world. I told him it's just neighborhood paperwork. Truth is, I hate losing control of home. After my wife died, that yard was therapy. Every post I set was a small act of order. Losing that to pettiness felt like losing her again. I drafted a calm email to the board. Please provide the recorded plat and governing documents authorizing trail access across Lot 42. The next morning, I got a reply from the same president, signed in bold caps. "Stop harassing the board. Trail use is historic. Remove your fence or face daily fines." I read it twice, then printed it for the binder. Paper beats gossip. Always. 2 days later, Pete came back holding a manila folder. "Found this in county archives online," he said, flipping open a faded survey from 2009. A dotted line marked "Temporary Construction Easement, expires upon completion of sewer install." That sewer was finished 12 years ago. The trail? Never public. My heart pounded like a nail gun. I thanked him, made a copy, and stored it with my evidence. I didn't tell a soul, not even Ethan. Sometimes leverage grows best in silence. When June 30th came, I sat through the hearing in the clubhouse. No microphone, no minutes taken. The president waved my photos like trash. "We can't have residents blocking emergency access," she said. I asked for the emergency plan, the recorded easement, anything. "We're not here to debate legal technicalities," she snapped. This is about community spirit. That line right there, community spirit, usually means I'm right because I feel like it. I kept my voice even. You'll have my written response within 7 days. Outside, the Texas air felt like soup. Pete stood by his truck, shaking his head. You keeping notes on all this? Every word, I said. If you've ever dealt with an HOA that confuses control with safety, you know the feeling, like you're arguing with a mirror that shouts back fines instead of reflections. Tell me below, are you firmly anti-HOA, or have you actually seen one that works? If you've fought one before, share one tactic that helped others stand up. That night I sat at my desk, flipping through binders until the clock hit midnight. I highlighted every reference to trail, access, or easement in the governing documents. Nothing mentioned Lot 42, not once. I closed the binder, clicked my pen, and whispered to the empty room, "You want community spirit? You're about to get an education in property law." By the next morning, I'd already drafted 3 public records requests, one to the city planning office for trail permits, one to the county clerk for all easement filings post-2005, and one to the HOA's management company for their insurance policy declarations page. I sent them certified, logged each tracking number, and made fresh coffee. On July 6th, a thin envelope arrived from the county. Inside was a single photocopy, release of easement, recorded August 18th, 2009. It bore a signature from a developer I recognized, long since dissolved. That's when I smiled for the first time in weeks. The next day my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "This is Alan Marks, attorney for the HOA," the voice said. Smooth, polite, but with a lawyer's sharpened edge. "You've been distributing misinformation about trail access." "I'm distributing public records," I replied. "And you might want to check your client's filings. Mr. Lewis, the board can pursue injunctive relief. Then you'll need standing. Do you have that without a valid easement?" Silence. Then a curt, "Expect correspondence." Click. That was my signal to dig deeper. Pete stopped by again that evening, thermos in hand. "You poked the hornet's nest," he said, grinning. "Good," I said. "Maybe the hornets will show their paperwork." The following week brought a new tactic. The HOA's landscaper accidentally sprayed weed killer across my side of the fence line. Dead grass, 50 feet wide. Then came a notice claiming my lawn failed to meet community standards. I measured nitrogen levels from a soil kit, photographed the dead patch with a ruler beside it, time-stamped, uploaded to cloud storage. Knowledge nugget number 1. Selective enforcement violates most state HOA acts. If a rule isn't applied uniformly, penalties can be voided. I sent the landscaper a certified demand letter for property damage, copied the HOA's insurance carrier. When you deal with bullies, CC the Monet. They listen to that faster than morals. A week later, I found 2 city inspectors on my lawn. "We got an anonymous complaint about unpermitted structures," one said. "Fence. Yep, but your permits check out." "Anonymous, huh?" I handed them bottled water. "I think we can guess who that was." The inspectors left, chuckling. I filmed their visit from my porch camera. One-party consent state. Fully lawful. That night, the HOA president emailed the whole neighborhood accusing certain residents of harassing volunteers. My name wasn't printed, but everyone knew. Pete texted, "Ignore the noise. You're winning where it counts." Still, the pressure worked on Ethan. "Dad, are we going to have to move?" he asked, voice small. I told him no, but my gut twisted. Losing the house wasn't the fear. It was losing the sense of home she and I built together. I spent the weekend drafting a full report, 12 pages, 30 exhibits, GPS screenshots, and permit printouts. I titled it, Trail Access Claim, Factual Record. Every document had a header with date, source, and stamp. I uploaded it to a private link and copied Alan, the attorney. No commentary, just facts. Monday morning, he called again. "Mr. Lewis, the board is open to resolving this amicably." "Then stop trespassing and rescind the fines." "They can't do that unilaterally." "Sure they can," I said. "Section 5.02 allows discretionary forgiveness by board vote." "You're welcome." He exhaled. "You're unusually informed." "Occupational hazard." The next evening, I watched from my porch as the president met him by her SUV, arms crossed, lips tight. She gestured toward my yard like it was a crime scene. He didn't look pleased. When she drove off, Pete came over with a smirk. "Looks like you're living rent-free in her head." I chuckled. "I'm aiming for her bylaws next." We were halfway through July when I got an email marked urgent. Special meeting, board vote on trail easement enforcement. It was scheduled in 3 days. Attached, a PDF agenda with item 3B, authorize legal action against Lot 42. They were doubling down. Perfect. That night, I pulled out the old survey and scanned every inch. Bottom right corner, tiny print, subject to reversionary rights held by DM Partners. I Googled. DM had been a small utility contractor, dissolved 2012. But their rights? They didn't vanish. Through public filings, I found the successor entity's contact, one-man operation now, a semi-retired engineer named Martin Delgado in Amarillo. His phone number was still active. "Mr. Delgado," I said, "I think you might still hold a reversionary right on an easement in Denton County, Lot 42, Brookridge Subdivision." Long pause. "That's old history. We built that sewer line." "Yes, but the clause says the rights revert to you upon completion. It was never assigned away." He laughed softly. "So technically, I still own the strip of dirt under their so-called trail?" "Technically," I said. "Yes." "Well, son, maybe I'll sell it to you." That's how leverage begins. Not in court, but on a quiet phone call with a man sipping coffee 400 miles away. Before we go further, tell me this. If you'd uncovered a clause that flipped the HOA's entire claim upside down, would you buy it quietly or announce it loud? Drop your answer below, or at least like the video so I know you're following this ride. I drove to Amarillo the next morning with a cashier's check for $2,500. Met Martin at a diner off I-40. We signed an assignment of rights on a napkin first, then notarized it properly at a UPS store. By lunchtime, I legally owned the easement under their trail, the same trail they were threatening to sue me over. I didn't celebrate, not yet. Leverage doesn't win by shouting, it wins by waiting. That night, I filed the assignment with the county recorder, document number 2023-147281. Timestamp 8:47 p.m., and then I waited for their special meeting. The meeting took place on July 19th in the same beige clubhouse that smelled like burnt coffee and laminate flooring. The HOA president sat at the center table, red blouse sharp against the fake wood paneling. Alan, their attorney, was on her right. About 20 residents filled the folding chairs. I stood in the back, binder in hand, pretending to take notes while they called the meeting to order. The president cleared her throat. "We're here to discuss unauthorized obstruction of community access by Lot 42. I watched Alan's face when she said community access. His jaw flexed once. He knew. After 10 minutes of procedural mumbling, they opened the floor. I raised my hand. "Mr. Lewis," she said coolly, "please be brief." "I'd like to read a record from the Denton County Clerk," I said, holding up a document. "Assignment of Reversionary Rights, Document 2023-1047281, recorded at 8:47 p.m. on July 13th. It conveys ownership of the trailbed, your so-called access, to me." The room fell silent, except for the hum of the ceiling fan. Alan whispered something to her, but she waved him off. "You can't own community property," she said. "Then produce the deed showing it's community property. It's common area. Everyone knows that. Knowing and recording are different, and there's no record of transfer from the original developer to this HOA. Without that, your authority to enforce is void." A neighbor coughed awkwardly. Pete grinned from the second row. I handed the clerk a copy. "I'm formally revoking any permission for board members to enter or cross my property. Future entry will be treated as trespass." That line hung heavy. Alan adjusted his glasses. "We'll need to verify authenticity," he said carefully. "Please do," I said. "The county stamps on page 1. She slammed her gavel anyway. Meeting adjourned pending legal review. Outside, the July heat hit like a wall. Pete followed me to the lot. "You just dropped a live grenade in there." "More like a truth bomb," I said. For the next week, silence. No fines, no emails, no notices. Then, like clockwork, retaliation resumed. My trash pickup was delayed due to HOA coordination. Someone filed another anonymous complaint, noise this time, and the HOA's Facebook page lit up with posts about selfish residents who destroy community harmony. Ethan saw one on a friend's phone at school. "Dad, why do they hate us?" "They don't," I said quietly. "They just hate losing control." I doubled down on documentation. Every comment, screenshot, date, time, URL. Pete helped me notarize witness statements from 2 other neighbors who'd been bullied for similar reasons. Knowledge nugget number 2. Under Texas Property Code, FAR 209.005, homeowners can request copies of HOA financial records, contracts, and insurance certificates within 10 business days. Non-compliance can trigger statutory penalties. So I did exactly that. Requested everything. The management company stalled, saying the president was reviewing sensitive materials. Translation: hiding something. 5 days later, an envelope arrived. Inside were 12 pages of heavily redacted bank statements and a single insurance certificate showing an annual premium of $18,700, billed to the HOA for trail maintenance, the same trail that wasn't legally theirs. I scanned, circled, and called the insurer listed, Midtex Mutual. "Hi," I said. "I'm confirming whether policy number MX 92471 covers parcel 42B. "Doesn't look like it," the agent said after checking. "That parcel's excluded. Who's claiming it?" "Homeowners Association of Brookridge." "Well, they can't. We only insure titled parcels. If it's reverted to private ownership, that coverage is invalid." Bingo. That night, Pete and I sat on the porch with beers, watching lightning bugs drift through the yard. "So what's next?" he asked. "I let them file the suit," I said. "Then I counterclaim for declaratory judgment and tortious interference." "You really want to go to court?" "No," I said. "I want reform. But first, they need to realize how deep they've dug." He nodded. "You're playing chess. Trying to teach them it's not checkers." Around 10 p.m., headlights rolled slow past my driveway, the same white SUV she always drove. It paused at my fence, then crept on. Ethan saw from the window. "Is she spying on us?" "She's nervous," I said. "Bullies always are before the truth lands." Later that week, the HOA mailed a notice of continuing violation with a running tally, $200 per day, $6,000 total. I laughed out loud. Each page was stronger evidence for my counterclaim. "Tell me something. How far should an HOA control your own property line? Should they dictate your fence, your porch, your paint color? Or does the right to quiet enjoyment mean something still? Drop your thoughts below. I read every one." 2 mornings later, a certified envelope arrived. Notice of small claims filing. Brookridge HOA v. Nathan Lewis. Hearing date, August 14th. Perfect timing. I'd already scheduled a site inspection with the county's property records office to verify parcel boundaries. When the inspector arrived, a young woman named Clara with a laser rangefinder and a notebook, she walked the line twice. "You're right," she said, marking the coordinates. "This trail isn't common area. It's entirely within your parcel. Would you be willing to state that on record?" "Sure. I'll issue a signed field report tomorrow." She did, with seal and date. Evidence item number 37 in the binder. By August 10th, my folder was 2 inches thick. Deeds, maps, insurance letters, correspondence logs, inspection reports. Each page labeled, indexed, tabbed. I carried it like armor. That Friday, Pete patted my shoulder. "You ready for the hearing?" "As ready as anyone going up against bureaucracy in a polo shirt." The next step wasn't to shout. It was to let the system see itself on the mirror. August 14th arrived with the kind of still heat that makes courthouse bricks shimmer. The small claims courtroom in Denton Municipal smelled like copier toner and anxiety. I wore my inspection badge on my belt, not for intimidation, just quiet authority. Alan sat at the petitioner's table, perfectly pressed, papers stacked like a fortress. The HOA president perched beside him, jaw set like stone. When the clerk called Brookridge HOA versus Nathan Lewis, I stepped forward, binder in hand. The judge, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and a voice like gravel, looked over her glasses. "Mr. Lewis, representing yourself?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Proceed." Alan started with a rehearsed speech about community cohesion and unauthorized obstruction of shared amenities. He introduced glossy photos of the fence, an aerial map, and copies of HOA rules. Then he said the words I'd been waiting for. The association maintains liability insurance on all common areas, including the trail traversing Lot 42. I flipped to Exhibit F. Your Honor, I have the insurer's written confirmation that Parcel 42B is excluded from coverage due to lack of recorded ownership by the HOA. I handed her the letter, signed and dated. Alan froze. The judge read, frowned, and looked up. Mr. Marks, is this accurate? He hesitated. I can't verify without, it's public record, I interrupted, calm. Filed policy MX92471, Mid-Tex Mutual. And this, I held up another page, is the recorded reversionary rights assignment, document 2023-147281, transferring ownership of that land to me. The judge read the top line, then leaned back. So, Mr. Lewis, you're saying the HOA is enforcing fines on property they don't own or control? Yes, ma'am. She turned to Alan. That's a serious claim. Response? Alan cleared his throat. We were unaware of any reversion. Unawareness isn't a defense, she said. Case dismissed. All fines rescinded. And I strongly recommend the association review its governing documents before attempting further enforcement. The gavel came down like thunder. The president's face went white. I caught her whisper, he can't do that. But the judge was already on to the next case. Outside, the air felt lighter. Pete clapped me on the back. You just handed them their own rule book. Not yet, I said, watching Alan storm off. They'll double down before they back down. 2 days later, they did. A neighborhood-wide email went out. Recent litigation has created confusion regarding trail access. The board is exploring all remedies to protect our community assets. Translation: war wasn't over. Still, something shifted. Neighbors who'd kept their heads down started stopping by. Mrs. Ramirez from 2 streets over brought lemonade. They fined me $300 last year for a basketball hoop, she said. Could you look at my letter? I did. Same boilerplate wording, no signature, no board vote record. I told her to hold tight. I had a plan forming. That night, I spread every document across my dining table like battle maps, easements, policies, emails, CCRs, meeting minutes. Pete had quietly scanned from his time as secretary years ago. I looked for patterns. Found one. 3 years of trail maintenance expenses totaling $54,000, with no invoices or vendor names. That's not enforcement. That's laundering under the guise of upkeep. Knowledge nugget number 3. Most state HOA statutes require annual audits and disclosure of vendor payments exceeding $10,000. Failure to do so can void officer indemnity coverage. I called a friend from my old city job, Rachel Kim, a municipal auditor with ink-stained cuffs and a dry laugh. If I send you anonymized ledgers, can you flag irregularities? Off the record, she said. For now. Send them. Within 48 hours, she replied. Repeated transfers labeled trail maintenance, operating fund AGI. Each ends in even $9,000 increments. That's not maintenance, it's padding. Knew then what I was holding wasn't just leverage, it was liability. I drafted a short letter to the HOA board. Pursuant to Section 209.051, I request full disclosure of all disbursements coded under trail maintenance from 2020 to present. Failure to respond within 10 business days will be deemed non-compliance under Texas Property Code. Sent certified. 3 days later, Alan called again, tone brittle. Mr. Lewis, the board would like to meet informally to discuss settlement. I prefer formality, I said. Transparency tends to work better under lights. He exhaled. If you want to resolve this peacefully, stop sending discovery-style requests. I'm just exercising homeowner rights, peacefully. He hung up without goodbye. By early September, I started noticing a shift online. Someone leaked screenshots from our last meeting to a local Facebook group. Comments poured in. Did the HOA just lose a case? Is the trail even theirs? Where's the money going? The president posted a defensive statement that only made it worse. Pete texted, "They're crumbling." Before the next board meeting, I spent a Saturday in the garage printing every piece of correspondence. color-coded tabs, red for financials, blue for property, yellow for legal. Then I sealed the binder with a metal clasp. Visual beat number 1. The click of that clasp echoed through the garage like the sound of the tide turning. Tell me, when you're facing a crooked board, would you push for total exposure or try to settle quietly? What's the smarter path when power hides behind volunteer service? Drop your take in the comments. I'm curious how many of you would hold the line. I knew which path I'd take. Quiet doesn't clean rot, it just lets it spread. By the second week of September, the HOA's counterpunch arrived. A thick envelope taped to my door. Notice of comprehensive inspection. According to the letter, they were exercising their right to verify compliance with landscaping, exterior lighting, mailbox paint, and even visible yard toys. They scheduled it for September 17th, between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. That wasn't an inspection, it was a siege. Pete found me in the driveway reading the notice. "They're trying to bury you in citations," he said. "I know," I replied. "That's why I bought 2 new SD cards for the cameras." I spent the weekend tightening bolts on the fence gate, repainting the mailbox, photographing every angle of my lawn with date stamps. Ethan helped, camera in hand, laughing as he called out measurements. That laughter was fuel. Monday, 8:06 a.m., a white HOA SUV rolled up. The president herself stepped out with 2 board members, clipboards ready. I started my porch camera, waved politely, and said, "This inspection's being recorded for documentation." She frowned. "You can't record us." "Texas is one-party consent," I said. "And this is my property." They spent 30 minutes pacing, pointing, pretending to measure shrub height. When they left, I followed up with an email summarizing every minute. Knowledge nugget number 4. Selective or retaliatory inspections violate good faith duties under most state HOA acts. Documentation turns intimidation into evidence. Within 48 hours, 5 separate violation letters appeared in my inbox. Mailbox color too matte, lawn edge uneven, trash can visible from street, outdoor lighting too bright, fence unapproved material. Each fine, $150. Pete laughed when I showed him. "They're inventing crimes faster than a bad novelist." "Let them," I said. "They're building my pattern of harassment." Still, the stress crawled under my skin. One night, Ethan came into the living room while I was cross-referencing bylaws. "Dad, what if they take the house?" "They can't," I said softly. "They only win if we stop fighting fair." He nodded, but I saw the worry linger. The fear of losing our home, that old wound, was back open, raw as fresh concrete. I kept working. I filed complaints with the state's HOA ombudsman and the county's fair housing office. I attached photos, timestamps, certified mail receipts. Then I called Rachel, the auditor. "They're going to implode," she said. "If those payments are unaccounted for, you're looking at insurance fraud." "Insurance carrier already flagged exclusions," I reminded her. "Then their officer's indemnity's worthless. You've got them cornered." But I didn't want to just corner them. I wanted the community cleaned up, not crushed. September 17th ended with a bizarre twist. 2 patrol cars rolled up around 9 p.m. An officer knocked on my door. "We got a wellness check call. Claim of yelling. Possible domestic disturbance." I blinked. "My kid's asleep, officer. We were watching a ball game." He glanced around, saw the tidy living room. "Yeah, figured. Anonymous call? Let me guess. The HOA president?" He didn't answer, but his smirk said everything. After they left, I stood on the porch, hands shaking. That's when fear turned into resolve. You can't reason with bullies who use police time as toys. You can only out-document them. By late September, I had over 180 logged events. Photos, recordings, letters, call notes, timestamps. I compiled them into a digital archive and backed it up to 2 drives, one with Pete, one in my desk safe. Still, retaliation spread. They tried smearing me in newsletters, resident causing division. They posted my fence photo online. One neighbor crossed the street to avoid me. Another whispered, "We're rooting for you, but we can't get involved." That's the psychology of HOA rule. Fear of paperwork more than fear of truth. The next board meeting was set for October 3rd. I planned to attend, silent, patient. The clock was ticking toward reversal number one's reveal. Before we get there, think about this. Fines, $250, $500, $1,000. Are they justice or just a revenue scheme? What's your personal limit before you'd fight back? Comment below. Your stories keep this channel alive. That week, Pete helped me print 3 poster-sized parcel maps. We highlighted the easement strip in bright red, labeled Privately Owned, Recorded. I added the insurer's exclusion letter and Clara's inspection report. Then we rolled them into tubes for the meeting. Ethan watched me pack. "You're nervous," he said. "Just focused," I replied. "You always win when you're focused." At exactly 6:58 p.m. on October 3rd, I walked into the clubhouse carrying that binder and the maps. 30 residents, 2 reporters, and 1 county inspector were already there, the neutral authority I'd quietly invited through a public records notice. The HOA president didn't see him walk in behind me. She just saw me, and that was enough to make her jaw tighten again. The air inside the clubhouse felt heavier than the Texas humidity outside. Folding chairs scraped, ceiling fans hummed, and the smell of brewed coffee mixed with paper toner and tension. The HOA president sat at the head of the long plastic table, flanked by her usual 2 lieutenants. Alan, their attorney, was there too, tie loosened, eyes darting between us and the stack of documents he'd probably spent all night skimming. She started the meeting with false calm. Before we begin, let me remind everyone that tonight's agenda is about community unity. We ask that personal disputes not dominate discussion. I stood from the back row, holding my binder. Then this should be quick. Every head turned. I walked up, placed the binder on the table with a hard thud, and rolled out the large parcel map. The red highlight glared under the fluorescent lights. "This is the property you've been calling a community trail. It's not. It reverted in 2009 and was reassigned to me this July. Document number 2023-147281. Alan cleared his throat. "Mr. Lewis, we've been reviewing that document's validity." "You mean the one recorded with the county clerk's embossed seal?" I flipped to the copy. "It's valid." The president's smile strained. "Even if that's true, our residents have used that path for years. That makes it a prescriptive easement." I almost laughed. "You can't claim a prescriptive easement inside a recorded subdivision with deeded lots. Texas courts have ruled that since 1985. You'd know that if you'd read your own governing law." The county inspector, Clara, stood from her seat in the corner. "He's correct," she said firmly. "Subdivision access must be recorded to be enforceable." It wasn't. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Cameras clicked from the back. Reporters. The president stammered. "Who invited?" I cut in. "I did. It's a public meeting under Section 209051 of the Property Code. You can't exclude the press." Alan whispered to her, but she snapped, "Sit down, Mr. Lewis." "Actually," I said, lowering my voice so the room leaned closer, "you might want to hear this before you bury yourself further." I turned to the audience, flipping open the insurer's letter. "For 3 years, this HOA billed you over $50,000 for trail maintenance, using your dues. There are no invoices, no vendors, and according to Midtex Mutual, the policy covering it is invalid because they don't insure property the HOA doesn't own." Gasps broke out. Pete folded his arms and said loudly, "That's where our dues went." Alan looked genuinely rattled. "We'll need to verify." "Already verified," I said, sliding copies toward the inspector. She stammers. "Ped them received." The president's voice cracked. "This is slander." "No, ma'am," I said evenly. "It's documentation. And here's the part you'll want to hear carefully. As the owner of that parcel, I've submitted a formal cease and desist against all board entry and expenditure on that land. Any further spending there constitutes misappropriation of association funds." The inspector nodded. "That's correct. I'll note that in my report." Visual beat number 2. The metallic sound of her gavel hitting the table echoed off the walls. Too loud, too final. Everyone froze. She realized it was no longer her meeting. A neighbor stood up. "So what happens now?" I looked around the room. Now, the truth starts paying its own bills. Alan muttered something to her and they huddled. Then he turned back. "Mr. Lewis, would you be open to a private discussion to resolve this without escalation?" "Maybe," I said, "after the inspector files her report with the county ethics office." The room broke into side conversations, neighbors whispering, snapping photos of the maps. Pete leaned toward me. "You just flipped the board upside down," he whispered. "Not yet," I said. "We still need the reform deal." Outside afterward, under the parking lot lights, Clara shook my hand. "That was gutsy." "Just accurate," I said. "You want a copy of my field summary when it's processed?" "Yes. And send it to the HOA's insurer, too." Her smile widened. "You think long game." As she drove off, I watched Alan and the president arguing near her SUV. He pointed toward me, then toward the clubhouse, clearly frustrated. The power dynamic had shifted. Their fortress cracked wide open. Driving home, I felt the adrenaline wearing off. Ethan was asleep on the couch when I got in, the TV still on some baseball replay. I pulled the blanket over him and sat for a long time staring at the screen's glow, reflecting off the stack of files on my table. It wasn't triumph yet, but it was the hint, first breath of justice. For those of you watching, should homeowners in my shoes go public like this, or handle it quietly behind closed doors? You've seen both sides now. What would you have done? The next morning, local news picked it up. Homeowner challenges HOA over alleged fraudulent trail expenses. The story quoted the inspector's statement verifying ownership transfer. By noon, my phone buzzed nonstop. Neighbors, reporters, even a regional HOA reform group asking for interviews. But amid the noise, an email from Alan stood out. "Mr. Lewis, the board requests a formal mediation. There may be room for structural reform discussion." That was the signal. Reversal number 1 had landed. The dominoes were starting to fall. Mediation took place 2 weeks later in a bland conference room downtown. Gray carpet, humming HVAC, and fluorescent lights that made everyone look a shade more guilty than usual. The HOA president sat opposite me, posture rigid, a bottle of water untouched before her. Alan was there, exhausted but resigned. Across the table sat the mediator, a retired judge named Robert Hanley, white hair, square glasses, calm as stone. "Let's keep this professional," he began. "We're here to find resolution, not vengeance." "I couldn't agree more," I said. Alan slid a folder toward me. "The board proposes a mutual stand-down. No further action, no public statements, and no pursuit of claims." I glanced through it. "And the fines?" "Waived." "And the fraudulent expenses?" He hesitated. "Internal audit pending." "So, no accountability," I said, closing the folder. Hanley folded his hands. "Mr. Lewis, what are you seeking specifically?" I took a breath. "Structural reform, transparency, term limits for board officers, public financial postings, independent ethics committee, and rollback of assessments by 15% until the audit's complete." The president's eyes widened. "That's impossible." "It's necessary," I replied. "You call yourselves a community association, not a monarchy." Hanley looked at her. "Can the board agree in principle?" Alan leaned close to her ear, whispering fiercely. She whispered back, but her expression was unraveling. Finally he sighed. "We can agree to transparency and an independent audit, but term limits require bylaw amendment." "Then amend them," I said. "I'll even help draft the motion." For a long moment, the only sound was the air vent clicking. Then Hanley nodded slowly. "Let's write it down." While Alan typed the memorandum, the president kept her eyes on the table. "You think you're some kind of hero?" she muttered. "No," I said softly, "just someone who reads before signing." At that, Hanley almost smiled. We adjourned an hour later. The mediator handed copies to both sides. My conditions were officially accepted, pending ratification by member vote. Visual beat number 2's echo still lingered in my head, but this felt like the quiet after a storm. Outside, Pete waited by the courthouse steps, sipping from his thermos. "How'd it go?" "They blinked," I said. He laughed, the sound carrying down the marble hallway. "Knew they would." That night, I sat at my desk drafting a summary letter for the neighborhood email list. Transparency agreement reached, audit pending, reform vote scheduled. Within an hour, replies poured in, thank yous, relief, even apologies from people who'd stayed silent before. For the first time, the community felt like an actual community. Still, I knew there was one more card to play, the domino collapse. The insurer, the county, and the press were all watching now. and the HOA's audit deadline was 30 days. The following week, local Channel 8 News ran a segment. Trail fraud probe expands. HOA under audit after whistleblower complaint. My name wasn't mentioned, but everyone knew. The reporter stood in front of our subdivision sign while flashing the audit figures on screen, $54,000 in undocumented maintenance. By mid-October, the insurer froze the HOA's liability coverage pending findings. The management company resigned, citing hostile working environment. 2 board members followed. The president tried to hold on, but emails leaked, messages between her and the landscaper's fake invoices. The county ethics office confirmed a referral for potential fraud investigation. That was the sound of dominoes hitting the table one by one. Pete dropped by again, shaking his head. You realize you just dismantled an entire machine? Machines don't feel shame, I said, but people can rebuild better ones. Before you scroll, tell me something. When board members abuse power like this, what do you think should happen? Resignation, fines, or prosecution? And if you were in my chair, would you take the deal or keep pushing? 2 weeks later, I got an envelope, not from the HOA this time, but from Hanley, the mediator. Inside was a simple note. Reform vote passed. Audit to be published. Congratulations. I stared at the line for a long time, realizing reversal number 2 was finally in motion, the system reforming from within. 2 days after that letter arrived, the morning sun hit the porch just right, warm gold, cutting across the slats of my rebuilt fence. Ethan was sitting on the step, backpack by his feet, scrolling through his tablet. Dad, he said, you're on the news again. I glanced over. There I was, voiceover rolling under B-roll of the clubhouse. The anchor said the audit confirmed $53,870 in misappropriated HOA funds, plus 3 years of selective enforcement violations. The county attorney's office had issued formal citations to the former president and treasurer for filing false financial statements, and the insurer had canceled the HOA's liability policy pending restitution. That was accountability in plain daylight. Pete texted a photo a few minutes later. Our neighborhood bulletin board with a new notice tacked up. Community Reform Charter adopted, effective November 1st. Below it, signatures from the interim board. Term limits, public records, annual town hall meetings, independent ethics oversight. Every line from the list I'd written in that mediation room was now law. I took a deep breath and let it out slow. For the first time in months, the air didn't taste like tension. That night, they held the first open records forum in the clubhouse. I didn't stand at the podium or brag. I just sat in the back, watching neighbors read the new policies pinned to corkboards. Mrs. Ramirez brought cookies. Pete cracked jokes about freedom cookies, and even the folks who once crossed the street waved when they left. The new interim president, a retired teacher named Helen, tapped the microphone. Going forward, we'll publish every expenditure, vote, and contract. No more secrets. She looked toward me. This happened because one resident decided documentation was better than shouting. That's how communities heal. The room applauded, soft at first, then building. I didn't stand. I just nodded. Ethan grinned beside me, proud in that quiet way kids get when they finally understand why their parent fought so hard. Visual beat number 3. After the meeting, I walked home under the porch lights, dropped the last violation notice, the one for my approved fence, into the fire pit and watched it curl into ash. The smell of burning paper mixed with cedar smoke and relief. For those still watching, if you believe I fought the right way and this is how it should end, say a few words in the comments for your friend. Subscribe so future stories reach you first, and share this so others learn that lawful persistence still works in this country. That part's on us. In the weeks that followed, the story made rounds across Texas. A homeowners' rights nonprofit used it in a training seminar. The state ombudsman's office issued a bulletin reminding HOAs about financial transparency. 2 neighboring communities voted to adopt similar reforms. Even the old landscaper sent me a short letter. An apology, signed in shaky ink. Life got quieter. I went back to my inspection work, weekends fixing porch lights for neighbors who once glared at me over fences. And some nights, when I passed the gate I fought for, I still hear the echo of that gavel and remember what it cost to earn silence. That means peace instead of fear. When people ask why I bothered, I tell them this. You don't fight an HOA to win a fence line. You fight to remind everyone that home is supposed to belong to the people who live in it, not the ones who weaponize the rules. Next case? Probably not mine. But there's always another fence somewhere, another letter, another person thinking they're alone when they're not.